Welcome to Climbing Together, the small business experience. I'm Beth Houtrow, founder of Climb the Small Business Book Club, and every episode I talk to a small business owner about a mistake that they've made and what they learned from the experience. Mistakes are inevitable, perfection's impossible, so let's embrace the mistake. And we're so excited today to welcome Cherry Yates. Cherry, tell us a little bit more about you and your business.
Hi, thank you, Beth, for inviting me here to the podcast. I'm so excited. Hi, I'm Cherry Yates, and I'm a marketing and communications consultant. And recently, I've added career coaching to the mix, and I've been doing this for about a year, just over a year. And prior to this, my background really, I was part of the corporate world for 20 odd years in various leadership positions in marketing, public relations, and corporate communications with global entertainment brands like National Geographic, Discovery Channel, Fox International, and then most recently at FX Networks. And actually, that's what brought me here to LA with my family. And I'm a bit of a global citizen. I'm originally from Singapore, grew up in Indonesia, went to school in Australia, lived in Europe, and then finally made it to the US with my husband. And today I'm in LA. And I was just telling Beth earlier, it's 90 degrees or 30 something Celsius, and it feels like Singapore right now, the heat here in LA.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, so many amazing experiences. I'm sure that really adds to your creativity and communication and marketing and what you can bring to the client. So that's awesome. All right. So we are here to talk about mistakes or misconceptions, misunderstandings. So tell me a little bit about a mistake or misconception you had when you first started your business.
Sure. Definitely, I would begin with misconception, I guess. I'll give a bit of background how I kind of came to this after 20 years in the corporate world. I had not an inkling to be an entrepreneur, had no sort of idea I wanted to even do this. Interestingly enough, because my family, my dad's side, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather, my father, started sporting goods businesses. My mom ran like a Montessori school. And then here I was in the corporate world doing communications, branding, marketing, loving it. And launching global brands across the world. But then the pandemic happened, and with everyone else, there was a bit of sort of a pause and introspection and wondering what is my next chapter? What is it that I, love and what makes me happy? I loved what I was doing, and I was thinking of, maybe moving to another company and doing the same thing, but that wasn't really exciting me. I felt like, okay, I've been there, done that. It's a different company, but the same thing. And then actually a good friend of mine sort of planted the seed, and she's like, have you thought of consulting? You have these years of amazing experience all around the globe. And that really sparked something in me and almost like lit a fire. And at the same time, I was actually volunteering with this nonprofit, and they had asked me to help with their marketing strategy and rebranding. And I really loved it as a consultant. And I thought, you know what, let me give this a go. So I guess the misconception part comes, then I thought, all right, let me start this. And I had no idea what I was walking into. And I'll say this is because when you're in the corporate world for 20 odd years, and I had sort of made my way I was vice president of marketing and communications. You have your team, you have an assistant, you have, budgets that are given to you. I didn't have to worry about legalities, accounts, none of that.
Right.
And just focus, right? And then you start your own business, and even opening up my LLC, and thank goodness for YouTube and Google and all of that. And also reaching out to people to, figure out things. And I think that was a very steep learning curve for me, because I sort of decided, and then, all right, well, what are all the things I need? I didn't realize half the stuff, to be very frank. And I thought, oh, wow, there's a lot of even basic things, admin stuff that I had someone else doing it in my previous world. And I'm like, oh, I have to figure it out myself. And even things like social media, I still do the strategy, but I never had to actually create anything because we had a group of designers and a graphics team, right? But I did. And, Canva, thank you, to learn all these things. But while it was a bit scary, I loved it though. It's been such a learning process. I've acquired so many skills that I didn't even know I had it in me. And I think that's been part of the journey that I love. I've learned more in this 12 months to 18 months than I did in the last 5 years. And I think that's what's exciting about this journey / also misconception that got me a year later to here.
Well, that's a great way to see it, that not knowing kind of allowed you to take the step that maybe you wouldn't have known or wouldn't have done if you had known. But then that took you into a place of opportunity to learn and grow and expand. Yeah, I love that idea. Very cool. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just, I think, and then, reading up on books and reaching out and talking to people, I got to know more. But you're right. I think had I known like all these steps that I need to take, maybe I would have had a paralysis of thoughts of making the move. So in a way, that a little bit of that ignorance helped me sort of just make that move. So it kind of worked out.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So if you had one piece of advice for an entrepreneur who is just getting started or thinking about getting started, what would you tell them?
Yeah. So I look at it kind of twofold, right? For me, the kind of the big macro and way of the advice I would give that I went through it myself was that you have to shift your mindset. That's huge, and everything else will flow. And being a solo entrepreneur, having worked in the corporate world for so long, where you have the steady paycheck, the safety net, and then going to what I got to make this much money. How do I do it? How do I get my clients? Where do I start? It's scary, and it's the unknown. No matter how many books you read, whatever advice you get, the fear sets in, and it can sort of consume you and cripple you, maybe in that sense of like, how do I move forward? And what I did was sort of a mental exercise. Like, instead of thinking all the things that can go wrong, I started looking at like, well, what if all the things went right, and use that fear, the energy from that fear, and direct it towards like, all right, I need to take these actions, these baby steps one by one, opening my LLC, then, now creating my website, like bit by bit towards, and direct that energy towards sort of that positive thinking. And it works. And I think the minute I shifted my mindset from sort of going from fear to kind of not fearless, but using that energy to actually, to be fearless, it was a game changer. And I started enjoying the journey. I wasn't living in that fear bubble anymore, and started looking at everything. And I think that's where the learning comes, and the fearlessness kind of helps you approach people, and you're sort of like, it becomes this fire that you want to get excited to do. So that's one aspect. And then I say everything kind of flows from that. And then the other thing from that I learned is like, don't be afraid to ask for help, and I think that has to, again, do with sort of the ego and all of that stuff. Because again, for me, I'd been, an executive with all this years of experience. And I thought, how do I approach people and ask for help? And thinking, well, he's a busy man. Why is he gonna, is he gonna give me a time of day? And lo and behold, and which has been such an amazing experience, is that everyone I've reached out to, like every single person, whether it's from friend or someone I knew I worked with 20 years ago, in different parts of the world, everyone has been so generous, so kind, and giving advice, giving their time. And it's, almost restored my faith in humanity, actually. And it's been a wonderful experience. And in fact, for me now, I kind of use that as a pay it forward. So I always, and, to your audiences too, if anybody is in a position, it has been in the corporate world, is thinking of switching, or any other questions, I'm like more than happy to help, because all these people have been there for and continue to be there for me. And I think that's been amazing. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, that is just such an essential lesson. So many entrepreneurs go it alone, especially small business owners.
Right.
And not only is it's uplifting, right? When people help you, it just accelerates things so much more quickly than trying to figure out how to do everything on your own.
Absolutely.
The acceleration, I mean, why the book, Who Not How, right? They talk about, instead of going out and figuring out how to do everything, think about who you can ask, who can point you in the right direction, help you overcome or avoid setbacks, you know, and move quickly, as opposed to, I mean, don't get me wrong, YouTube, I love learning online, but it could be a lot faster if someone's like, this is what you got to do. So
right,
yes,
absolutely.
reaching out for help.
And also the other thing is when you ask, you realize everybody's had their journey, right? No one got there just like that. And it's really interesting when people share that, hey, I made this mistake, or, you know, this is what I did. And then and that feeling of, you're not, especially when you're a solopreneur like myself, you don't feel alone anymore, because you're like, you have this community and kind of like, okay, I'm not alone. Everyone else had this sort of similar journey to get where they are.
Yeah, awesome. Well, on that note, the key tenets of Climb the Small Business Book Club are continual learning and community. So tell us a little bit about your continual learning. I know you're a book reader. So what's your favorite business book?
Yeah, no, great question. Love your book club, which I look forward to every month. And actually, two of my favorite books were Marketing Made Simple and The Creative Curve, which I loved from your book club. But the one I think I would really recommend to your audiences, especially if they're small business owners, is the One-Page Marketing Plan by Alan Dibb. What I loved about it was, first of all, let's get real. Business books can get a bit, repetitive and a snooze fest.
They're dry. They're dry.
Yeah. And so I think Alan does a great job with his sense of humor and his style of writing. It's very succinct. It's broken up into 3 acts, and he kind of just lays it out, and really a one-page marketing plan. And for me, a seasoned marketer, it was great. It's a great refresher. And then as a business, entrepreneur, what I loved about it is that all of us look at it sort of, and he talks about this, that we compare us to big organizations, like, oh, we have to have that ad spend, we have to go big, and you don't. And he gives really practical steps of what we can do as small business owners. And yeah, I think it's such a practical, funny, easy read. So I would highly recommend that.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you can get a free copy of that book from Alan Dibb. I will drop that link into our podcast information so that anyone can go get it, because it is a great book. And I'm so glad you recommended it. All right. So on the community side, you've talked a little bit about this, but how have you built community as an entrepreneur, and what's that meant to you?
Sure. And I continue to build it. Well, your book club, for one, is definitely one of my communities. In fact, as I mentioned, I started career coaching too. So one of my clients is from the book club,
right? Yeah,
which is fabulous. And prior to, when I got started, there's this online sort of, it's called Lunch Club, and I joined that about a year ago. And actually, one of my clients is, I met through Lunch Club. So I created I got to know a lot of people from there and created that community. And then really reaching out to, with my 20 years of knowing colleagues all over the globe, I reach out to them, made connections again, and then reaching out to people I've worked with before, like agencies, industry leaders, and, just reconnecting with a lot of them. And that goes back to what I was saying, that people have been so generous with their time, and I have go-to people for certain things. And I think that's really important, to have that circle of where who you can go to for advice. But not only that, like, especially if you're a solopreneur or small business owners, if you through your network, hey, that's she or he's a good graphic designer, sort of, I put all these names in my pocket and know who to reach out and build that trust. And I think that's really great to have that community, and it's not sort of cold call. So yeah, I think that really helps.
Amazing. All right. Well, Cherry, thanks so much for chatting with us today.
Thank you. This was fun. Let's do it again.
This podcast is brought to you by Climb the Small Business Book Club, where entrepreneurs go to learn, discuss, apply, and grow. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, or follow us on Instagram at Climb Book Club. And always remember, mistakes are inevitable, perfection's impossible. So let's embrace the mistake.